Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast with your host, Michael Sapersky, where we take you deep into the world of elite consultants.
Hey, it's Michael Sapersky, and today I'm very excited to have Ron Carucci joining us. Ron, welcome.
Michael, so great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So Ron, for those who don't know you, explain what you do.
Sure. So I spend my days with my colleagues at Navalent, sort of traipsing the planet with leaders and executives who are in the throes of some very substantial transformational change, whether that's a strategic change or an organizational change or some combination of those, or a leadership change. But somewhere at the intersection of those three domains, we do our consulting work. Our relationships usually span multiple years. It's any combination of strategic formulation, organization design, cultural shifts, and executive leadership behavior that form the basis of the help we provide our clients.
And were you always interested in this? I mean, did you, like when you were younger, think, okay, I want to build a consulting business and I want to help people deal with leadership issues and change, or something completely different?
I was doing something very different early in my career. I studied in the arts, was my formal training, or my initial formal training. And I was working in Europe I was over there for about 3 years. And in one particular, so our company that I toured with had a contract with the State Department and the U.S. military. And in one particular program we were doing at Dachau, in the chapel, so a very sacred and difficult place. Mm-hmm. Back in the days I'm talking about, the words diversity and inclusion weren't terms yet, but in essence, that's what the workshop we were doing would have been called. And we're using our arts and our medium to help people think about that. We had East Germans and West Germans in the room. We had civilians and military, State Department personnel, a variety of folks who needed to work together very differently. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, the symbolism of having that conversation and doing that performance in that location was not lost on anybody.
Right.
And during some of the conversation afterwards, one of the young American military personnel, probably not much older than me, stood up in the conversation, and he very emotionally and in a very heartrending way said, "I'm just so tired of being trained to hate." And I think my first response inside was, I can't believe something I did up here made him think that out there. But I wanted to know more. And so we continued the conversation. And even afterwards, he and I went out to get a beer in Munich to talk more. And I think if I look back on my career, Michael, that was extremely pivotal point where I realized, telling great stories to the world is very interesting, but engaging others in their story is far more life-giving for who I am, and probably a better place for me to spend my career. And that began the turning place for me of learning more of the science behind how leaders and organizations work together and how they direct themselves and how they work together. And every day I get to enter the stories of other people and hold those stories with great care and help those leaders in those organizations write the next chapters of their stories in ways they aspire.
And how did you go though from that kind of pivotal moment of working in the arts to actually starting a consulting business?
So it wasn't quite that direct. I switched careers into learning and development and organization development. Mm-hmm. Got formal training in that, and spent a lot of my career inside organizations early on. So I worked for a couple of very large corporations. But I not so quickly, I learned the hard way in several of those places that being an agent of change inside organizations has a particularly challenging meaning. Mm-hmm. And ancient wisdom says you can't be a prophet in your own land, and I think I continue to be proof of that. My children learned that I was collecting up these wonderful things called severance packages, and they knew that meant more time with Dad.
Right.
But what I learned that it meant was it was very difficult to do the kind of courageous change work inside companies. But I also started to learn that what got me a severance package inside a company got me well paid outside a company. Mm-hmm. And made the decision, and I started my own practice, and then I sold it to a consulting firm and spent 8 years with a wonderful firm in New York City that grew and grew and then sold itself to a very large firm. And in those years, got the amazing experience of working with the most senior leaders, the gatekeepers of organizations, to help them influence great change. And I think when that firm sold itself to a larger firm, the game changed, right? Now it was about revenues and profits and leading and managing. And a couple of us in that firm were passionate about the work. We loved the science of socio-technical systems and loved the science of helping organizations and leaders, come together and realize their greatest aspirations. And we didn't love, just having to generate revenues and profits and, maximize utilization of people. And those are important things to do, but it wasn't what we loved. So we thought we can still do this. We can still have our dream of the work we love to do. We can go start our own firm. Mm-hmm. And so we left that firm in New York City in 2004 and started Navalent. And so 13 years later, we're still doing the work we love to do for often enough, the clients we love to do them with.
Right. So the firm that you had way back that you initially sold, was that, like how large of a firm was that? How many people were part of it?
That was just me and a couple of friends. It was a small, loose practice. And I think as much as I, after exiting large corporations, that you feel more in control of your destiny, you feel like, wow. But I also was at a time in my career where if I was honest with myself, I knew I didn't have 30 more years of expertise to make money on. Mm-hmm. I was doing a classic independent contractor, a potpourri of activities for money, but work that I love to do and work that I was good at, but it wasn't focused. It wasn't really deepening my expertise, and it was selling to the middle parts of organizations, not the top parts of organizations where I really wanted to play. And I knew that if I wanted to consult and probably spend my career outside of – I realized – I have a passion for organizations, but the best way for me to express that is by not being part of one. I realized I don't have enough of what that takes for 30 more years of a career. I need to go someplace and get that experience. I need to go and really invest myself among people who have done that before. I was in my late 30s at the time. And so I didn't want to trust that I could just continue to be a consulting hack for 30 more years and feed my family and save money to retire and buy a home and whatever. So it was one of the most difficult, in fact, it took a whole year, decisions of my career, and proved to be one of the most profound ones and probably the best decision I ever could have made, because that choosing to go where I went set me on the path to be able to do the kind of work I do at the level my firm does it. Right. And with the kind of training and experience and knowledge I could have never gotten on my own or anywhere else or in an academic program.
Well, Ron, let me jump in. So right now at Navalent, you have more than 10 employees, I believe?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What made you or kind of got you to decide that you would go the path of building a firm? You're a managing partner and owner now at Navalent. Why, intentionally build a firm with employees and everything that comes with that, as opposed to being, Ron Carucci, the solo independent consultant expert in your domain?
You're so gracious, Michael, to use the word intentionally as if that's how it happened.
Well, then tell me, what happened?
So what began was a few of us loved working together. We knew that when you love the people you work with, it changes the work. Mm-hmm. And so it began as a very small group, but we also realized that for us to do the kinds of engagements we want to do, for us to have the impact we want to have, you need to show up to organizations that are large with enough resources to have them be confident you can actually get the work done. And we knew there were people out there, practitioners, who loved this work and also wanted to do it as a center of plate discipline, not a side dish. Mm-hmm. And so we began growing. I would be dishonest to say it had a whole lot of deep strategic intentionality behind it. It didn't. It was organic. It was some trial and error. We've had some successes with how we've added resources. We've had some other places where we've been very unsuccessful because we didn't do a good job. Now we have a much more robust year-long onboarding process for our consultants, and a year-long, by our partners, the middle partners of the firm who lead that. Mm-hmm. And so we're far more, after 11 years, it's about time. 11 years, we're more thoughtful and intentional about what it really takes to bring in and help, because we're a virtual firm, right? As many boutique firms are, we're virtual, which is very particular. You have to learn how to not just govern a firm well and create cohesion among a virtual firm, but you have to be able to define your standards of practice and define your brand and define what it means to be successful in your firm for your clients. So we had to do all that work. But once you've done all that work, you actually have to embody it and you have to keep it alive and fresh. Mm-hmm. And when you're, the three of us who own Navalent are also practitioners. We love being in the trenches with our clients. And as is the case, I think, with every professional services firm, doing the work and running the firm are two different things. And a lot of times the things you do for the firm are just firm citizenship things, right? You don't get paid for those. You do it because you love the community you're with and it needs to be done. But there's not a pot of money that pays you for that. You get paid by your clients. And so we have a lot of professional services firms get themselves into trouble when they cut up their compensation system to reward overly individualistic behaviors or reward bureaucratic behaviors. And so our compensation model incents great client work. Right. And I don't want my consultants sitting in there counting their billings and wondering what they're going to make that month and all that kind of stuff. I want them, exclusively obsessed with helping their clients solve tough problems. And so
what kind of metric then do you use to measure that in terms of compensation based on great client work?
Well, it's obviously it's an eat what you kill model. So it's a very aggressive, a lot of your compensation's at risk, but it's a highly billable billing leverage model with very little leverage in it. So we don't leverage our consultants. Right. And so people are not feeling utilized and used. They're not feeling like, oh my gosh, my own fate is not in my own hands. Right. And so we feel, there's lots of downsides about that kind of economic model, but the upside for our clients we feel outweighs the limitations of it.
Makes sense. Ron, you've written several books on leadership. That's a big, broad topic. How do you stand out and differentiate yourself and your business when the topic of leadership can apply to so many different things and in so many different ways? How do you actually stand out?
Well, interesting, Michael. I began my writing work. So I don't make my money as an author, right? I make my money as a consultant. Mm-hmm. My writing is to solve the problems my clients face. But my first two books were about consulting. Right. So, I began my career at a time where the consulting industry was getting a well-earned bashing by the media and by writers and thought leaders. You had books like Consulting is Insulting and Witch Doctors and, all kinds of horrible things where an industry that grew up too fast, grew up without standards, grew up in a very greedy way, mm-hmm. was getting the well-deserved backlash. And for me and my colleagues, it was painful. It was embarrassing. You used the word consultant and you winced because you didn't know how people saw you as, the food chain is plankton, amoeba, fungus, lawyers, consultants, right? And so that's how you were seen. And so we thought, okay, but there's still value here. There's still something great we can offer. Let's go do the research to find out what that is. And so my first two books were about how to be a great consultant. But where that led me after my second book was, okay, but that consultant to do great work still has to have a relationship with a leader, mm-hmm. right? There's still got to be a connection there. So that's where I began to turn my attention to how are leaders leading change, leading impact in their organizations, whether they have outside partnership or not. So that's what began me on that journey. It wasn't like I set out to write about leadership. I think we continue to do research. For me is important. Data and patterns. We have access to wonderful data because of our diagnostic work. And so as I have continued to write, I've leveraged the patterns and the broad data sets we have available to us because of our work. And when I stumble upon or run headlong into some protracted, intractable problem that clients seem to be facing, that I don't have the best answers for, I feel like, gosh, I'm not sure I understand why this keeps happening in these kinds of organizations or these kinds of industries. I want to go find out why. And that's what typically has led to my writing projects. The most recent one, Rising to Power, was based on the fact that somebody in an organization that I worked in after a major transformational project we'd done got fired. He had been elevated. He had distinguished himself in amazing ways in the transformational effort, when he was given a broader assignment, nobody was surprised. People assumed he'd be brilliant. And 9 months later, he'd been fired, which made no sense to us at all. And the CEO was quite angry and said, you didn't do a good job preparing him. And so I wanted to understand what we could have done differently. And we went back in to investigate. And that led to a 10-year longitudinal study of more than 2,700 leaders, because what we found was we've known for 20 years that leaders rising up in organizations, that 50% of them fail in the first 18 months of their assignment. And that's sort of been okay, right? I think the recruiters love that because it's an annuity for them. Sure. But everybody else, it's a complete endless tragedy and carnage and waste. And we thought, come on, we surely we can do better. Surely we can find what these landmines are and get them out of the way. Surely we can't be misjudging people's potential that much. And so that data set led to the book Rising to Power to help our aspiring future executives navigate the tumultuous rise and ascent in organizations and thrive once they get to broader assignments. So that's where the material comes from, Michael. It's not and we use our thought leadership. We use what we see in the world as a way to distinguish ourselves by working hard to write about the things we know our clients care about. Many consulting firms spend time writing about their methodologies or writing about their own case studies to self-promote. And, it's a very crowded market out there. It's a very, very, very cluttered world of people who use the consultant word or hang a shingle out or a small boutique firm.
And Ron, what about you've written for Forbes and Harvard Business Review, among others. What kind of impact has that, those articles had on your business?
Well, tremendous. I mean, and the point, I 2 years ago, I hired a coach for me because for this very question, Michael. I didn't know. I thought I was using thought leadership as a way to distinguish myself and my voice and my firm. But it wasn't working the way I wanted it to work, and I didn't understand why. And what I failed to appreciate was how noisy and cluttered and crowded it had become out there, and how much it really took to set yourself apart. That your ideas and your beliefs and your views on organizational strategic issues could help. I had no idea what I was doing, and so I hired a coach to help me with that. And she's been extraordinary. And what I've learned is that if you want to attract a certain kind of client, with a certain kind of character or predisposition, or who wants to solve a certain kind of problem, you have to make sure they can find you. And they have to make sure they can have access to your ideas in a way that they can resonate with and go, gosh, that's the kind of thing I'm struggling with. I wonder if they can help. And so you have to put yourself in those places where their decision pathways are, where their learning journeys are, where their investigation of how to take on the challenges they're facing lies, and you have to be in that path. And I was not. And
what would you say is one of the keys for people? Because I'm sure there's a process and a lot behind it in the short time that we have here. What would be one key principle or idea that people should consider if they want to, get their work published, write articles for the likes of Forbes and Harvard Business Review and other kind of leading publication? What's a really important?
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching.
Well, so the first thing is, one, have ideas. Right? Have ideas that matter and know that you can codify them well. Certainly have the skill to codify and package them in insightful, pithy ways, because many people have great ideas. They're good thinkers, but they're not good writers.
Right.
So let's assume you have the base level of capability to package relevant ideas from a client's perspective, from the challenges they're facing. Then from there are lots of great channels, right? You can start with LinkedIn. There are lots of business publications out there, Inc., Fast Company, and that will take your submissions.
Right.
Before you get a regular column like I have HBR or Forbes, but you have to earn your way to do it. But it takes discipline, Michael. You have to be committed to doing it regularly. You have to be committed to wanting to talk about things that your clients matter, and you have to be incredibly patient because it takes a long, long time before you have enough of a platform, because it's not just about putting ideas out there. You have to have all the machinery in your social media and in your other mechanisms and in your networking of people you talk to get them to share your ideas, right? So just having the ideas and just codifying them brilliantly is not enough. And that was my big problem. Right. I thought it was. I thought I was having good ideas that are interesting and well documented. The world will come to you. And that's so far from the case.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, Ron. Just, the commitment and the discipline is important, because I think a lot of times people look at the tactics, or in some cases even a strategy, but they forget the mindset that is required and the level of discipline and commitment that is really the most important before you can even just think about the tactic or the strategy. So I'm really glad that you shared that. Between the books that you've published over the years and the articles that you've written, would you say one over the other, publishing books versus writing articles and publications, has played a bigger role in your business development, in lead generation and growth for the firm? The other I would add as a third pillar, Michael, has been podcasting. So this conversation we're having right now, I probably do 10 podcasts a week now, because it's a very vibrant medium. It's a very vibrant place for people want to consume ideas. So I've added a third pillar. In addition to the writing medium, I'm also doing this. And of course, there's speaking, right? So I'm doing, I don't know what I was thinking, committing to this, but I'm doing 2 TED events back to back, 2 weeks apart. I don't know. First one is this Saturday. So I think these things work in concert with each other. I don't know that they each play a role, right? So books are certainly a source of social proof and credibility. Articles are certainly, depending where you put them and what you write, are certainly a source of access, a broad thing. But if you haven't got a great Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook and social media platform in which to help those articles get traction in life, and sometimes they get syndicated, right, or a great syndication relationship with folks that will put your pieces in their newsletters and share them, or a network of folks. So part of what I spend a lot of time in Forbes doing is interviewing people. I interview really interesting and novel thought leaders to help share their ideas and also get seen as part of their network as well. And so these are all very interrelated mechanisms that work and each play a different role in ultimately generating leads. Ultimately, you want access. So you want to have some routine way to begin a conversation with somebody, right? So my firm, we also publish a quarterly magazine. We have a monthly collection of our own writing and other people's writings we share with people. And so we have a free ebook that allows people to learn about our methodology, and all that to begin curating content that they find useful and curating a conversation with them that eventually makes them want to say, hey, now these people I think could help me, right? So it's all part of a much bigger ecosystem of work that starts casting a net very, very wide, and eventually working that net into you to a place where you have an intimate, ongoing relationship with folks that eventually you can curate to an offline conversation that eventually, if it proves to be mutually beneficial, becomes a client. In the early days, Ron, before you were writing all the books and the articles, was there something else that you were doing early on in the development of this firm, Navalent, or in your previous firms, or kind of experience and career, that you found to be effective in generating opportunities to win new business?
Well, prayer helps.
Okay.
Michael, at the end of the day, it's all about relationships, right? So whether you're going to go to conferences and network, or most consultants make the terrible mistake of assuming that their expertise and their smart solutions are what people want. And it's not. Our research, our very first book, The Value Creating Consultant, revealed that the primary delivery mechanism of value is the relationship. It's the attachment you form with clients. It's the deep levels of trust, not the manipulative kind of codependent relationship that makes you a messiah or an answer ATM, but truly a mutually reinforcing partnership. That's the vehicle on which your expertise must be conveyed. And too many consultants lead with answers instead of relationship. And so however you form those relationships in whatever vehicle you find yourself in, for so long, demand creation wasn't the muscle it should have been for Navalent, and we're paying a price for that now. We're having to catch up because our networks of relationships were so strong and so good. Our clients would leave one company, go to another, and take us with them. Mm-hmm. And so we had plenty of referrals and plenty of repeat business because we worked so hard to be so good, and our clients truly valued their relationship with us. And so while that was a great asset for us, it wasn't building the asset to replicate it. And that, later in life, as our clients retired or moved on to places where they didn't need our help anymore, we didn't have a coffer of replenishment or a muscle to do that. And so the last 3 or 4 years, we've been actually working very hard to build our demand creation muscle so that we can get out there and help the kinds of people we know we can serve best find us.
And what kind of steps are you taking? What does that look like when you say building that demand creation muscle for your firm? What kinds of steps are you guys taking?
It's the steps I mentioned before. So we started the magazine.
Right.
We started building our social media platform. We're speaking more disciplinedly. We're hosting breakfasts. We're curating conversations and communities of people coming to us. I'm writing for Forbes and HBR and our books, doing podcasts. So it's that work. I mean, right. but it's not just every now and then. It's a disciplined weekly, monthly, quarterly rhythm we have. And I by no means should tell you that we're good at it, but then there's a whole bunch of analytics that come with it, right? We have Leadfeeder and MailChimp and a bunch of really very sophisticated devices that, let me tell you, we're still nascent. We're still not as sophisticated as we could be to understand what that data is telling us and where we should direct our efforts and how we should go find people who seem like they could be great partners for us. So we're still learning after 2 years. It's a 4 to 5 year journey of really getting that machinery in place. And they tell you that for 18 months, you won't even see an inquiry. And sure enough, we got our first one and which did become a client within 12 or 13 months, depending on what your expertise is. Ours is a very niche expertise, so it's a little bit higher bar for us. For those with expertise or selling professional services that have more broader application, maybe it can be a different timeline. But too many people don't put the work in. They'll dabble. So they'll start a blog and they'll write for a few months and then they'll stop, and then 5 months later they'll do another piece. And it's the consistency of your presence in the right places is so critical because it is so crowded and noisy out there. Yeah. And I would also say there's a lot of drivel. I mean, there's a lot of, just to be blunt, crap out there. And so just putting out stuff, you have to really be thoughtful and have depth and have a voice that can be quickly distinguished from among the clutter, where people can go, because you got about 8 seconds to get their attention when they're scrolling through a million things, right? So you have to be able to have the work to go, oh wow, I want to hear that, or that's different, or that's fresh. And
Ron, how have you developed that discipline? What steps have you taken, or what mindsets or what choices have what's just influenced that level of discipline? Because I think a lot of people, as you've said, they want the result, but they're not prepared to really make the commitment. Even if they say that they are initially, they don't carry it through. So in your case, you've clearly thought this out very well. You've been working through it. What has fostered that level of discipline that you now have?
Desperation. So I would tell you, you're being kind and assuming that the discipline was always there. It was not. We dabbled, right? It was a hobby for us, but we had such a great network of clients that we didn't have to be disciplined. So, we have our debates in our firm about demand creation work and, earlier efforts to go sponsor a conference or do others, that one of those speed dating conferences with pay to go. They're terrible, but we dabbled at best. But about 2.5 years ago, we got serious. We had more of our risk exposed with too much work with too few clients, and we knew that was dangerous, and sure enough, that proved to be true. And for me, I found myself taking on clients in my heart of hearts I knew I shouldn't take on. Mm-hmm. I thought I'm too far into my career now. I don't want to work with sociopaths anymore. I want to work with good leaders and smart leaders and, flawed, but people who care about their organizations. I don't want to work with, sociopathic people. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, the ones I want to work with are not finding me. The sociopaths are. I don't know what that says. Right. And so if I don't do something different, it's not going to change. At least I'm smart enough to take that part of my own medicine, right? Mm-hmm. Say it to my clients all the time. But I also knew that everything I was doing seemed to be, spectacularly ineffective. And so I hired a coach. I went and found somebody whose expertise is this mm-hmm. to say, and she has been brilliant. And of course, helped me realize that not only was I not doing the things I should be doing, I wasn't even in the right galaxy. I wasn't even close. I had great content and great ideas. One of her opening parts of her diagnostic to me was, if you set out to be the best kept secret in consulting, you've done a great job. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. It never would have occurred to me to write for Forbes or for HBR. Right. So you have to learn. These are muscles, especially if you're a consultant that's in your late 40s, early 50s, or you grew up in a very different era of consulting, or you grew up in a consulting firm. These were never requirements. Demand creation this way, was never a requirement. If you're a niche firm, you're not going to pay to advertise. You're not going to, pay all kinds of money to put out ads. And so you have limited resources with which to invest to get your message and your presence out there. And so for us, the digital world became a great option because it's not free. There is money involved. But compared to I'm not going to put a Navalent billboard, O'Hare, right next to Sapient or Accenture, right? So mm-hmm. We're not that. So finding the ways in which we could build a platform of exposure, but you also have to accept the very difficult journey that, you're going to put a bunch of content out there and 3 months later, you're not going to have 20 new clients. And you have to be disciplined and patient, both of which have been challenged in my firm at any given time. Mm-hmm. But we're seeing fruit. We're seeing early evidence that it's effective, and we're seeing the evidence of work. Do I have 30 inquiries a week? No. Will I one day? Maybe. The greatest is I don't need 30, but 10 or 12 a month would be perfect for my size firm. Right. But high quality inquiries, right? I don't just want somebody saying, hey, can you come facilitate my offsite? Sure. Or can you come speak at my sales meeting? I want meaningful questions about the kinds of problems we are good at solving. So, for many, Michael, I find people, it's exhausting and they don't want to learn. It's too intimidating. It's too late in their career to start. They want to hire and outsource it, which you can do, but you have to be that committed to this work. And as my coach says, too many die on Heartbreak Hill, halfway up, mm-hmm. because they just give up. And I will tell you, I've got an article on my LinkedIn profile called "The Challenges of Being a Thought Leader Are Different Than You Think." And it's about my relationship with my coach. And I was very vulnerable in saying, if you're going to start down this path, good for you. And here's what you can expect, because it's not easy. It's well worth it, but it's not easy.
I think, Ron, this is such an important message that you're sharing. It's a real message, a real conversation that may not be easy for some people to hear, but I think for everyone listening, really give some thought to what Ron is sharing. It's not creating meaningful results, and what I like to call meaningful success doesn't always come just simply by doing things that are easy, right? Quite often it comes from being very committed, very dedicated, decisive, and then working hard at it, consistently. And I think that you've really shared a great example of that, Ron. So thank you so much. Ron, what's the best way for people to learn more about your work and to connect with you?
would love to have your listeners join a conversation with us, Michael. We have at our website, www.navalent.com. Got all kinds of resources, articles on our work, on our methodologies. If you come to navalent.com/transformation, you can get our free ebook on leading transformation in organizations. Love to share that with you. Get our quarterly magazine called the Navalent Quarterly, which has great articles about our clients and case studies and thoughts we're having about different themes. We're doing a great virtual summit in March called Leading Through Turbulence, with a wonderful lineup of speakers, John Haidt and Dan Pink and Nilofer Merchant and Scott Anthony and Dory Clark and and then a bunch of executives who've actually led through turbulence. So it's a wonderful collection of content where we'll be curating that week. It's in early March. Registration will open for that probably in late December, so keep an eye out. And virtual summits, another example of demand creation, right? Mm-hmm. So we're doing that to build our set of friendships out there in the world. So love to keep the conversation going. Find me at Twitter on @Ron Carucci, also on LinkedIn. So happy to connect.
Good stuff, Ron. Well, thank you again so much for coming on here and sharing a bit of your story and message. Really appreciate it.
Michael, my pleasure.
Are you ready to take your consulting business to the next level? Learn more about the Accelerator Coaching Program at consultingsuccess.com.